Hi friends. Story on Friday presents you, Mountain of the Moon. Written by Bibhuti Bhusan Bandyopadhyay. In last episode we heard, Shankar and Diego witnessed a volcanic eruption. After that, Diego Alvarez is killed by Bunyip, the mysterious animal. Shankar started the journey alone. After some distance he found a cave. And in an excitement, entering a cave, he lost his way. 3 nights and 3 days, he is imprisoned in the cave. He almost died in that situation. Then, he somehow came out of the cave, following a faint stream of water, and some pebbles. His journey through the Kalahari desert began, leaving his future to destiny. Shankar is moving forward, in spite of suffering from water. He took shelter in the cave, to escape the cold at night. Thereafter. Mountain of the Moon, 8th and last episode. After entering in the cave, Shankar saw, he still had 24 unused, dry batteries. When he went into the cave, and turned on his torch, he found it was small, almost like a room. The floor was littered with small pebbles. Shankar was startled by what he saw at a corner of the cave. A small wooden barrel. It was astonishing. Who could have brought a barrel there? He took a few steps towards the barrel, and then his heart stopped for a moment. Beside the wall of the cave lay a human skeleton, with its skull turned towards the wall. Bits of cloth, that looked like rag, lay around it. Those were possibly the traces of a woolen jacket. Both the boots were still on the skeleton's feet. The dead man's rusted gun lay beside him. Next to the barrel was a corked bottle, with a sheet of paper inside. Shankar took out the paper, and found a message written in English. Shankar was about to shake the barrel, to check if it had any water, when there was a hiss sound from under it. Shankar's blood froze for a moment. The next moment, a large snake flashed its hood, 4 feet above the ground. The snake possibly paused, for a fraction of a second before striking, and the delay saved Shankar's life. His Colt 45 automatic boomed at a lightning speed. The head of the huge sand viper was mangled by the bullet. Blood and flesh splashed on the barrel and the wall. Alvarez had taught him to keep the gun ready at all times. That simple lesson saved his life many a time. It was a miraculous escape in more senses than one. When he checked the barrel, Shankar found it still had a little water. The black muddy liquid looked more like ink, but it was water all the same. Shankar lifted the small barrel, and drained the entire dirty, stinking water into his gaping mouth. Then he examined the dead viper, in torchlight. It was 7.5 feet long. The sand viper, a dangerously venomous snake, usually lies buried in the desert sand, with its head jutting out. Then Shankar unfolded the piece of paper, and read it. In the bottle, he also found the pencil, with which the message had been written. The message was,
I am looking at death, from close quarters. This is going to be the last night of my life. If after my death, a traveler happened to take shelter in this cave while crossing this desert, this paper would possibly fall in his hands. My mule died in the desert 2 days ago. There was still a barrel of water on its back. I have managed to carry the barrel all the way into this cave, although I am exhausted and sick. I have a fever, and I can hardly lift my head. Even otherwise, I was extremely weak after starving for days. I am Attilio Gatti, of the Gatti family of Florence. The famous sailor, Riolino Cavalcante Gatti, who fought the Turks in the Battle of Lepanto, was one of my forefathers. I am 26 years old. I studied at the universities of Rome and Pisa. But we were a family of sailors. In the end, my love for the seas made a wanderer out of me. I was on my way to the Dutch Indies, when our ship sank off the coast of West Africa. 7 of us somehow managed to swim ashore. In the western coast of Africa, the jungles are extremely dense. We took shelter in a hamlet of a jungle tribe, where we stayed for 2 months. In that village, by chance, we happened to hear the story of an enormous diamond reserve. They told us that the reserve was in a dense mountain forest towards the east. We decided to go after the diamond deposit, though the task seemed daunting. The men elected me their leader, and we trekked through dense jungles in search of the diamond reserve, although we were not sure if it really existed. No one from the village would come with us to show us the way. They said they had never been to the place and did not know where exactly it was. They also believed the forest was protected by a demon god, and that no one could bring back diamonds from there. But we were not to be discouraged. On the way, we faced terrible hardship. The journey took its toll. 2 of our men died on the way. The other 4 did not want to go on. But I, their leader, belonged to the Gatti family. We do not give up in the face of danger, however grave it might be. I knew for sure that I would hang on as long as I was alive. I refused to return. Can't write anymore. I know that a messenger of death will come for me tonight. Sereno Legrano, a beautiful lake. Our family mansion, Castello Riolini, is on its shore. Even from here, I can smell the sweet oranges in the orchards of our estate. I can hear the pleasant chime of the bell from the tiny church at the bottom of the hill. What rubbish am I writing? I must have become delirious. Let me jot down the essential information before it's too late. After all, how much longer can I go on? We did reach that mountain and the unusually dense forest. I discovered the diamond deposit. The source of the river, on whose bed the diamonds were found, is in a gigantic cave. I entered the cave all alone, and found innumerable diamonds on a riverbed in that cave. Each one of them was a transparent tetrahedron crystal, with a tinge of yellow. Such gorgeous diamonds are not seen, even in the gem markets of London and Amsterdam. In that cave, in the dim light of a smoking torch, I got a glimpse of the demon that protected that place. It was truly frightening, but it didn't come close, possibly because I was carrying a lighted torch. I think the myth that a phantom protects the diamond reserve has spread because of the creature. But the discovery of diamonds turned out to be a curse. And it was stupid of me to tell my companions about the find. When we all went into the cave again, I just could not find that stream along which I had found the diamonds earlier. The darkness was impenetrable, our torches didn't throw enough light. Secondly, the river had a large number of distributaries, I could not spot the stream that flowed over the diamonds. My companions were deckhands. They were brutes. They thought I wanted to cheat them and make off with the diamonds alone. I did not know of the conspiracy they had hatched. The next evening, all 4 of them together attacked me with knives. But they had underestimated Attilio Gatti. I have the blood of Riolini Cavalcanti Gatti flowing in my veins. Riolini Gatti, who had killed lots of barbarians like them, in the Battle of Lepanto. When I was a cadet in the military academy of Santa Catalina, I wounded the best fencer of the academy, Antonio Dreyfus, in a knife duel. My knife put 2 of them out of the way within minutes, and the other 2 were badly hurt. I too was wounded in the skirmish. The 2 injured scoundrels died that very night. I felt I should not go into that cave again, would not be able to find the diamond reserve, in the maze of that cave. Besides, I was badly injured. I had to reach the civilized world. I started towards the east. My destination was the Dutch colony. But I could not cover much distance. They had stabbed me, in the abdomen. Over the next few days, my wounds got infected. I have fever too. I wonder why men are so foolish, so greedy. They were my companions, the thought of cheating them had not crossed my mind ever. I am the owner of the greatest diamond reserve in the world, because I have risked my life to discover the place. I am sure that the gentleman who reads this message will be a civilized man, and a Christian. I entreat him to give me a proper Christian burial. In exchange of that act of kindness, I bequeath the diamond reserve to him. Even Queen Sheba's treasures would pale into insignificance compared to that deposit. I am going to die, but that's all right. There is nothing I can do about it. But what a terrible desert, one does not even hear crickets chirping. I never thought there were such desolate places in this world. Tonight, the Lake Sereno Lagrano, and the poplars around it are coming back, to my tired eyes again and again. Never again shall I see them, or the 14th century church by the lakeside. I shall never hear the divine chime of its large bell. Our Castello Riolini on the hill looks like a castle of the Moors. The green fields of Ambria, and the slender river Dora flowing through the vineyards. I have started writing nonsense again. Sitting at the entrance of the cave, I have been watching the countless stars, for the last time. I remember Saint Franco's prayer. I pray to thee, my Lord, for blowing the wind, and calming the storm. I pray to thee for the earth, for the blue clouds, and the sky. I pray to thee for the stars, for good times, and bad, for the demise of this body. Also, 5 large diamonds are hidden in my boots. It is for you, my unknown traveler friend. Please do not deny me a Christian burial. May Mother Mary bless you. Commander, Attilio Gatti. 1880, possibly March.
Unfortunate young man. 30 years had passed since his death. During all this time, no one had come this way. Even if someone had, he had not entered the cave. It took such a long time for his letter to reach another human being. Shankar wondered how there could be water in that barrel after 30 years. As Shankar read the letter, he realized that the cave described in Attilio Gatti's letter was none other than the one in which he had nearly lost his life. Then he eagerly took the boots off the skeleton's feet. 5 large stones tumbled out of them. They were exactly like the pebbles he had collected in the dark cave for marking his way, one of which was still in his backpack. He had seen thousands of these pebbles, under the water of that dark river, and on its banks. He just could not believe that he had unexpectedly stumbled upon the very diamond reserve for which Alvarez and he had for 6 months desperately searched the forests of the Richtersveld Mountains. Neither of them had ever imagined that such an abundance of diamonds could be strewn around like ordinary pebbles. If only he had understood. But what was worse, he had not noted down the location of the cave. He had not even left any sign that could help him reach the place a second time. It was by sheer chance that he had found the biggest treasure trove in the world, and lost it too. It was unlikely that he would locate it again. This young man also had not drawn a map of the place, but that was understandable. He was badly hurt shortly after discovering the deposit. Perhaps he had the skills to find the place even without maps, but Shankar had no such skills. Suddenly, he remembered what Alvarez had told him before his death.
Let's go, Shankar. An enormous treasure is lying in that cave. Can't you see? I can see it clearly.
Shankar buried the skeleton within the cave. He broke the barrel, took 2 pieces of wood and made a cross, by fixing them with a rusty nail. He put the cross on Attilio Gatti's grave. He knew nothing more about the rituals of Christian burials. He prayed to God for his unknown benefactor. All this took almost a day. He rested for the night and started off the next morning. He took the letter and the diamonds carefully. A gloomy thought came to his mind. Whoever went in search of that cursed diamond reserve did not return alive. Attilio Gatti and his companions died, Jim Carter died, Diego Alvarez died. In all probability, many others had perished too, before them. It might be his turn now. He, too, would breathe his last in this dreary desert, like the brave Italian sailor. As the desert caught fire in the afternoon sun, Shankar took shelter behind a mound. The temperature was over 130 degrees Fahrenheit. No human in flesh and blood could walk in that kind of heat. Perhaps he could have reached the civilized world if there was a way bypassing this terrible desert. He dreaded the desert. He knew that the Kalahari was the haunt of huge lions, but he was not worried about lions or any other wild animals. He had a rifle. But he had no defense against thirst. He just wanted an escape from the agony of thirst. In the afternoon, he saw mirages twice. He had been in the desert for quite some time by then, but he had not come across the fantastic vision earlier. He had only read about them. The first time he saw a mirage, it was towards the northeast. The second time, towards the southeast. They were similar. They looked like a mosque with a big dome, surrounded by palm trees and a large water body in front. The second mirage was more lifelike. By late afternoon, Shankar saw on the distant horizon hills that looked like low clouds. He just could not believe his eyes. Only one mountain range could be seen from there, the Chimanimani Range on the western borders of Rhodesia. It was incredible. Was he about to cross the immense Kalahari Desert on foot all alone? Oh God! Or was it yet another mirage? But as he continued walking till 10 o'clock that night, the outline of the mountain stood silent and clear in moonlight. That meant it was no mirage. Mirages are not seen at night. He knelt down to thank God. Was there still hope for him then? He was the owner of the largest diamond reserve in the world. He had earned his rights by tremendous grit and suffering. If only he could return to his homeland alive. In another 2 days, he reached the foothills of the Chimanimani. And there, another obstacle was waiting for him. He had to either climb across the mountain, or walk at least 25 miles in the desert and go around it. Shankar hated the idea of walking any more in the desert. He decided to climb the mountain. The decision would prove disastrous. He did not realize how difficult it was to climb a tall mountain all alone, particularly when he was exhausted and weak due to lack of food and water. It was as difficult as crossing the Richtersveld. In fact, it was even more difficult, because he was with Alvarez while crossing the Richtersveld. But here he was all by himself. As a result of this grave miscalculation, Shankar would see death from close quarters while crossing the Chimanimani. Even on the burning Kalahari, he had not seen death from such a distance. The jungle cover on the Chimanimani was not too dense. Shankar climbed to quite a height on the first day. Then he reached a place from where he could not continue any more. Neither could he find the path by which he had reached there. He felt he had moved away by at least 30 degrees from the point where he had started climbing at the foothills. He could not figure out how he deviated from the original direction so much. But he pegged away all the same. He hobbled from one point to another, climbing up for some time, and going downhill next. He tried to move in the right direction by observing the sun, but he realized that he was making very slow progress. On the third day, there was a new problem. The previous day, he had been hurt in the leg, when a loose rock rolled down the hill and hit him. At that time, he had not felt much pain, but that morning, he was unable to stand up. His left knee was swollen. It was impossible to climb in this condition. He had collected water from a stream while coming up. He was still managing with that water. He had to wait there till his knee got better. Though he could not go far. He forced himself to move around a little in search of food. In a way, he was fortunate that part of the mountain was relatively flat. Such hazards are quite common while climbing mountains far away from human habitation. Even experienced mountaineers could have faced similar situations. But Shankar could not take any more punishment. He felt he had come to the end of his journey. He could not take any more punishment. Something had gone wrong in his chest. His heart pounded on his ribs if he walked a short distance. He was completely worn out because of fatigue, anxiety, poor food, and more often, lack of food. On the fourth day, completely exhausted, he took shelter under a tree. He had run out of food from the previous day. Although he had a rifle, he did not get an animal within its range. In the afternoon, he was delighted to see an antelope, but at that moment, his rifle was 50 yards away, propped up against a tree. The antelope fled when he went to get the gun. There was little water in his canteen, but he was not in a condition to climb down to the spring to get water. The swelling in his knee had increased, and the pain was severe. He could hardly walk. It was a cloudless sky. Shankar could see up to a great distance. There were blue mountains on the horizon on almost all sides. Only the western periphery was flat and brown, the Kalahari. To his south was what he thought to be the Wahakuhak mountain, and behind it, the Paul Kruger mountain, showing up like low clouds. Nothing much was seen in the direction of Salisbury. A peak of the Chimanimani blocked that side. Vultures started flying over Shankar that afternoon. Shankar was scared more than ever seeing the vultures. Did they know that they would get their victim soon? The night was freezing. Shankar collected some dry twigs and leaves, and lit a fire. It was dark, nothing could be seen, beyond the small glimmer of the fire. An animal came, and crouched down a little away from the fire, almost merging with the darkness. It was a wild dog, like a coyote. Its ears were pricked up, and its red tongue lolled out through its white teeth. Then a second wild dog came, and a third. As night progressed, there were 10 or 12 of them. They were waiting in the darkness, apparently with endless patience. Did their instincts tell animals what was inevitable? Such an unholy sight. Shankar's blood froze. Was it over? Was he finally at the doorsteps of death? Would he too fail to return alive from the Richtersveld with its diamonds? The irony was that he had a fortune in his backpack. Even if he ignored the diamond reserve, the diamonds he had with him were worth not less than 2 to 3 lakhs of rupees. If only he could reach his poor village with such enormous riches. He could have changed the lives of many a poor man. He could pay for the wedding of many a girl. He could help helpless old people. But there was no point in dreaming what was impossible. He would like to forget everything, and enjoy the beauty of the starry sky and the mysterious night, like his Italian predecessor, Attilio Gatti. Before his death, he just wanted to watch the solemn, silent beauty of the mountain and the desert far below. There was an invisible bond tying them all: Attilio Gatti, his rogue companions, Jim Carter, Diego Alvarez, and Shankar Roy Chowdhury. It was late in the night, severely cold. He noticed the wild dogs had been coming closer. Their eyes glowed like embers from hell in the light of the fire. They moved slowly and silently, with enormous patience. Shankar felt they knew their victim was within their grasp. There was no way they could lose him. He knew it would be dangerous to fall asleep. Those ferocious dogs might tear him apart while he was still alive. He was sick and completely worn out, but he had to stay awake. He could not even afford the luxury of a short nap. The dogs inched closer slowly. They ran away when he threw a piece of burning twig, but came back within minutes. 2 hyenas also joined them. Their eyes shone more brightly. Shankar was in a terrible fix. At a height of about 3,000 feet in a desolate mountain, far away from the civilized world, he was immobilized and surrounded by hyenas and a pack of wild dogs. The predators were patiently waiting to tear him apart the moment they got a chance. The night was dark, and all he had for protection was a tiny fire. Above him, through the cloudless, clear sky, innumerable stars shone like millions of tiny electric bulbs. At the same time, he thought, he was not dying a useless death after an attack of malaria in a Bengal village. His death would be honorable and valiant. He had crossed the great Kalahari desert, on foot all alone. The Chimanimani mountain will silently record his death, as the passing away of a great traveler and explorer. After all, he had discovered an enormous diamond deposit. After the death of Diego Alvarez, he was able to come out of the confounding maze of that vast mountain forest. Now he is helpless, sick and immobilized. Even then, he is struggling. He has not given up. He is not a coward. Life and death depended on God's will. It would be all right if he died. The long night was over. There was light in the east. The wild animals vanished from the scene immediately. As the day wore on, the ruthless sun started burning all corners of the mountain. The vultures arrived as if on a cue. Some of them flew above his head, some waited patiently on the branches of trees or on boulders on the ground. They seemed to tell Shankar that they were not in a hurry, but at the same time, they put him on notice. They would not let him slip out. Shankar was not hungry, neither did he want to eat, but still he shot a vulture. The sun was scalding hot, the rocks were so hot that he could not step on them. The terrain was like a desert, there was neither food nor water. He lit a fire and started roasting the bird. Earlier too, he had eaten vulture meat in the desert. It was his only source of food. Today he was eating them, tomorrow they would eat his corpse. The vultures started flying over him again. In that lonely mountain, suddenly as Shankar saw his shadow on the ground. His unsettled mind thought it was a companion he had. A couple of times he started talking to his shadow, but the next moment, he realized what he was doing and controlled himself. Was he turning insane? Had he got fever? He was confused. Alvarez. The Diamond Reserve. Mountains and mountains. The ocean of sand. Attilio Gatti. He had not slept last night. It is going to be dark soon, he wanted nothing else, he just wanted to sleep. He came out of his trance, when he heard a noise. He wondered, what could have made such an unusual noise? It was rather strange, he could not understand from where it came. The sound became louder and louder. Suddenly, looking at the sky, Shankar was amazed. A machine was flying over his head, making a terrible clatter. Shankar recognized it as an aeroplane. He had seen pictures of aeroplanes in books, but had not seen one in real life. When the aeroplane was above his head, Shankar shouted, waved his shirt and a broken branch. But the pilot did not notice him. In no time, the flying machine vanished over the violet hills of the Paul Kruger mountain. What a fascinating machine. Shankar thought more planes might fly over him. He decided to light a bigger fire with fresh leaves, which would make a lot of smoke. If the aeroplane flew this way again, the pilot would hopefully see him. The plane did him one favor, it drove away the vultures. That day was over. With darkness, Shankar's nightly ordeal started all over again. It was a rerun of the previous night. The pack of wild dogs came and sat around him, away from the fire. The hyenas came, watched him and left. They came back again, later in the night. Shankar did not know how to drive them away. He could not shoot them, he had only 2 cartridges left. He would have to starve if he ran out of bullets. He was going to die in any case, sooner or later. But he refused to give up until it was finally over. However, soon, he had to use 1 bullet. Before morning, the hyenas came dangerously close, and the dogs too became bolder. They inched forward. They did not run away, when Shankar threw a piece of burning wood. Shankar dozed off for a moment. He woke up with a start, to find that the dogs had silently come within striking distance. He was afraid, they would pounce upon him before he could blink. In a nervous reaction, he fired a shot. But after some time, the same pattern was repeated. The dogs had immense patience, they would not go away. With dawn, the pack of dogs and hyenas vanished like a nightmare. The next moment, Shankar fell asleep by the side of the fire. He was awakened by a loud sound. In fact, it was a booming noise. Even after waking up, he could feel the sound was reverberating in that quiet mountain slope. Had he heard a gunshot? But that was impossible. How could there be another human being in this remote mountain? Shankar had only one cartridge left. He took a chance and fired a shot, using up his last cartridge. In response, someone fired 2 shots. Shankar was beside himself, with excitement and joy. He forgot about his swollen knee, he forgot he could hardly walk. He had no bullet left. He could not fire his gun again, but he shouted himself hoarse. He broke a branch from a tree, and waved it. He frantically foraged for dry twigs for lighting as large a fire as he could. A survey team from the Kruger National Park, in a convoy of 7 motor vehicles with Caterpillar wheels, was on their way, from Kimberley to Cape Town. They had pitched camp on the northwestern edge of the desert, near the foothills of the Chimanimani Mountain. There were 9 Europeans in the team, besides African helpers and porters. 4 of them had climbed up, and reached the lowest peak of Chimanimani Mountain in search of game. They were astonished to hear a rifle shot in that desolate forest, far away from any human settlement. As there were no further shots, they went deeper into the forest to check who was behind the gunshot. Then they saw a thin ghost-like figure, with sunken eyes and cheeks, and long, disheveled hair waving at them like a madman. He wore ragged, torn European clothes. They rushed towards Shankar. Shankar wanted to say many things at the same time and jabbered away, making little sense. The survey men did not understand a word of what he said. They gently took him to their camp, and carried his backpack. They put him on a bed. It took some time for Shankar to recover. He was sick and worn out because of starvation, worry, and also because he had eaten all kinds of things. Shankar had high fever that night. He was unconscious. He did not know when the vehicle carried him left, or when it reached Salisbury. He was in a Salisbury hospital, in a critical condition for 15 days. Then he recovered gradually, and after about a month he walked out of the hospital to stand on a wide road of a modern city. Salisbury. It was a dream come true. Finally, Shankar stood on the real footpath of a real city. There were tall buildings, banks and hotels. There were wide asphalt roads, along one side of which ran electric trams. Zulu rickshaw pullers pulled their rickshaws, vendors sold newspapers. Everything seemed unreal to him. Shankar had returned to civilization, but he had absolutely no cash on him. He could not even buy a cup of tea. As Shankar was wandering around and thinking what he could do, he was delighted to find an Indian store. He had not seen another Indian in a long time. The owner of the fairly large store was a Maiman Muslim from Kathiawar. He was a wholesale trader in soaps and perfumes. By looking at Shankar, the elderly shopkeeper understood that he was going through a crisis. On his own, he gave Shankar some cash. Shankar accepted the money and said, "I cannot thank you enough, sir. I am borrowing these $2. I will pay you back as soon as I can." He left the wholesale trader's store, and found an Indian eatery across the road. He could not resist the temptation of good Indian food. He ate puris, kashuris, halua, mutton cutlet, and cakes to his heart's content, and spent $1 in the process. He also had 2 cups of coffee. There was an old newspaper on his table. A bold headline read, "Strange Experience of National Park Survey Team." A dying Indian found in the desert. His fascinating adventures. The paper carried a completely imaginary story attributed to him. Shankar had never told such a story to anyone. He had been in no position to talk. His photograph also featured in the paper. The newspaper was the Salisbury Daily Chronicle. Shankar went to their office and introduced himself. Within minutes, a small crowd of curious people gathered around him. They told him that reporters had lost his trail and had not been able to find him, although they were keenly interested in his story. Shankar earned $50 by describing his experience in the Chimanimani mountain and allowing them to photograph him. From this, he returned the $2 to the kind Muslim trader. The following day, he wrote an article on the volcanic eruption in the paper. He christened it as the Mount Alvarez volcano. Not everyone believed his story of the volcanic flare-up in an unknown forest of Central Africa, but some did. In the article, he did not give the slightest hint about the diamond reserve. If he had, thousands of people would have rushed to find it. Later, he went to a bookstore and purchased a number of books and periodicals. He had not read anything in a long time. And in the evening, he watched a film. At night, he lay down on a comfortable bed in his hotel room, and as he read a book under an electric light, he looked at the Prince Albert Victor Street below from time to time. Trams and rickshaws were passing by. A bell was ringing in the Indian coffee shop, and every few minutes, a motorcar would whiz past, spewing black smoke. Another picture floated in his mind, a fire in front of him, vultures circling above, and wild dogs and hyenas crouching around him. He wondered which one of these visions was real. The dreadful night in the Chimanimani mountain, or this one. In the meantime, Shankar had become a celebrity in Salisbury. The lobby of his hotel was always filled with reporters. The newspapermen came to tie up contracts with him for publishing his travelogues. Photographers came to take his pictures. Shankar informed the Italian consul general about Commander Attilio Gatti. A search in the old records at the consul's office revealed that an Italian aristocrat by that name had been shipwrecked off the coast of Portuguese West Africa in August 1879. Somehow, it was also known that he had reached the shore, but nothing had been heard of him afterwards. His family was not only a part of the aristocracy, but they were also immensely rich. From 1890 to 1905, Attilio Gatti's family relentlessly followed up with the Italian embassies in all the coastal states of southern Africa for information about him. A reward had also been announced for anybody who would be able to trace him. They had given up the search after 16 years. With the help of the Indian trader he had met on the first day, he sold 4 diamonds to the biggest jeweler on the Black Moon Street, Rydal Moresby, for 32,500. The jewelers were prepared to pay more for the 2 remaining gems, but Shankar did not sell them. He wanted to take them home and show them to his mother. Blue Sea. Standing on the deck of a Bombay-bound ship, as Shankar watched the green coconut groves of Port Beira of the Portuguese East Africa fade away into the horizon, his adventures in Africa flashed before his mind's eyes like a film. This is how he had wanted to live his life, fully and vigorously. We often measure a person by a wrong yardstick, his or her age. In last 1.5 years, Shankar had gathered experience worth 10 years or more. He is not just another traveler anymore. He is the joint discoverer of an active volcano. He would tell the world about Mount Alvarez. At that point of time, he was restless to go back to the wonderful place called India, his home. He was desperate to see the tall pinnacle of the Rajabai Tower of Bombay, announcing that he had finally returned to his homeland. And then, his green village in a corner of Bengal, coming alive with the music of baul and kirtan. It would be spring in a few days' time. When his boat reached the small river jetty of their village, the paths and alleys would have been paved with white sown flowers, and the oriole would warble from their bokal tree. Goodbye, my guru, guide, and friend, Diego Alvarez. In this moment of infinite bliss, when I am on my way home, I remember you more than anyone else. You are among those rare people, who are true citizens of the world, who consider the sky above as the roof of their home, and the whole world as a road for them to travel along. Bless me, from your solitary home in the deep forest. I want to become like you, impassive in happiness, and calm in a crisis. And as fearless. Goodbye, my friend Attilio Gatti, perhaps you were a friend in one of my previous lives. All of you together have taught me how true is that Chinese saying. It is much better to be a piece of crystal, and be shattered into pieces than to remain static and contented like a tile on the roof. He will have to return to Africa again. But, at this moment, his home beckons him, yearns for him. He will spend some time in India. And then, he will try to form a company, and return to explore the faraway Richtersveld for the diamond deposit. He will find it again. Shankar's story ends here. But there is a persistence to the story. It's like this. When he was in Salisbury, Shankar met the curator of the South Rhodesian Museum, the renowned zoologist Dr. Fitzgerald. Particularly to tell him about the bunyip. A few days after reaching home, he received the following letter from Dr. Fitzgerald. The South Rhodesian Museum, Salisbury, Rhodesia, South Africa, January 12, 1911.
Dear Mr. Chowdhury, I am writing this letter to fulfill my promise to you, to let you know what I thought about your report of a strange three-toed monster in the wilds of the Richtersveld Mountains. On looking up my files, I find other similar accounts by explorers who had been to the region before you, especially by Robert McCulloch, the famous naturalist, whose report has not yet been published, owing to his sudden and untimely death last year. On thinking the matter over, I am inclined to believe that the monster you saw was nothing more than a species of anthropoid ape, closely related to the gorilla, but much bigger in size and more savage than the specimens found in the Rwenzori in Virunga Mountains. This species is becoming rarer and rarer every day, and such numbers, as do exist, are not easily to be got at on account of their shyness, and the habit of hiding themselves in the depths of the high-altitude rain-forests of the Richtersveld. It is only the very fortunate traveler who gets glimpses of them, and I should think that in meeting them he runs risk proportionate to his good luck. Congratulating you both on your luck and pluck. I remain, yours sincerely, J.G. Fitzgerald. This is the end of Mountain of the Moon, written by Bibhuti Bhusan Bandyopadhyay. Story on Friday, thanks to all the listeners who have been with this whole story. See you again with another story next time. Till then, stay healthy, stay well.